DummyNation just dropped an update which many people are saying ruins the game. If you don't know what I'm talking about, if you haven't logged in today, an update just dropped which introduces a ton of new mechanics into the game, some good, some bad, but let's talk about it. Now, the beauty of DummyNation has and always will be its simplicity. It's basically like the antithesis of a game like Hearts of Iron 4, which is very much known for its complexity, where a player can spend thousands of hours playing the game and still uncovering how certain mechanics interact with each other. DummyNation, on the other hand, has always been a simple game. Very easy to understand, with games taking 1 to 2 hours in single player, multiplayer 2 to 3. With this new update, I anticipate games taking 2 to 3 times as long, with a lot of challenges along the way and a drastically increased learning curve. But before we jump into that, let's talk about some of the positives this game has introduced. So the best change by far is the diplomacy screen. Now, in the past, you would have to click on an individual country, click on actions, and then go down to alliance treaty to see how much that alliance would cost. But now when you click on your country and go to diplomacy, you can scroll down and not only see how much each individual alliance will cost, but you can click on it from here and get an alliance with that specific country, which is great. We've signed an alliance treaty with Nauru. Fantastic change, 100% a fan of this. Another great change is new unit types. We have helicopters, which are fantastic. And more importantly, when we go down to research, we can get not only drones. Hold on, I'll show you here. We're just spinning a little bit of research to kind of prove that this works. We click here. And now, not only can we get just drones, but we can also get killer robots. Fantastic. Love that change. Love new units in there. Seems like a lot of fun. And speaking of new research, yes, there's a lot of new research. And a lot of it looks really interesting. Art of War reduces the time it takes your troops to conquer enemy territories by up to 100%. That seems like it's going to be a lot of fun. And there's a bunch of filled out research in all the economic trees, which seems like a big win for the game. Now, unfortunately, that is where the positives end. So let's dive into the negatives. Now, one of the updates the community was the most excited for was the pathing update. We all know and have struggled with the pathing that your units take in this game. Now, but the game tried to fix that with this slider right here. So this is saying, hey, we'll give you the option of going the fastest way or the most peaceful way, which is a great idea in concept. And I said tried and was great in concept because it doesn't quite work out in practice. So let's say us as France wanted to go to the Indian Ocean. What I would like this to do is go around and make sure we're not going through any countries that we don't have an alliance with or won't turn hostile for us walking through their territory. But as I unpause, you can see the pathing it takes is it's going through Europe. That's fine. It prioritizes the land border, which we're going to talk about here in a little bit. But then it goes through countries we don't have alliances with, like Armenia, Azerbaijan, or Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, Kazakhstan, and then China. So it really doesn't solve the problem and still has the possibility of walking through a country that will then turn hostile to us, stack wipe, or make us take attrition. So it's still much better to just draw the pathing and say, just go in a more reasonable way. The second thing that kind of sucks, but is not a huge issue, is the research tab. We talked about how cool it is to have all this great new research. However, a lot of these things are kind of mutually exclusive. So for instance, let's say we have combat training and reactive armor. Well, let's say I put 2 points into combat training. Boom. You'll notice 50% appears here. That means we can only spend 2 more ticks in either reactive armor or combat training. So if I was to put 2 more points into reactive armor, I'm at 100% and I can no longer put any points into combat training or reactive armor. It's a very obvious game mechanic to try and push you down the research tree, but it is a thing where I, as the player, want the choice to do that. And I don't like it when a game forces you into making that choice for you. But again, that is not what has the community in uproar. What has the community in uproar is the recruitment tab. It has become drastically different and very daunting. I have learned how some of these mechanics work to a good degree, playing a lot on stream, off stream, talking with chat, researching these things, but it's not an intuitive system. Now, to the game's credit, it does have a tutorial which does explain things to a certain degree, but not exactly where all these numbers are coming from. So for instance, this number down here is how many troops I'm going to be gaining. But when am I gaining those? Is it by day? Is it by tick? Is it by month? Is it by year? There's no explanation of that. The game has always needed a hover over tooltip function, and that's even more so now with this screen alone. So to explain this screen to you as best as I can, this is what you are currently producing. This is what you are going to produce based off changing the sliders. You can no longer recruit individual units. You have to adjust the sliders, which will happen over time. Now, one problem I found with this little feature here is it doesn't tell you what the statistics are of an individual unit, whereas you could see what a gunner would do. You can't see that. So I had a question, what do helicopters do? Well, the way I found that out was I had to go to my army, click the troops, get rid of everything besides the helicopters, and go, okay, so they add firepower, a little bit of armor, and a little bit of piercing damage. That's great to know. However, it would just be easier if it said that here. Now, this unit on top is your recruitment capacity. So let's say I have this stacked up as what my current army is, but I want more gunners. Well, if I start to raise this and this number goes above 100, watch what happens to the rest of these green sliders. They all go down. Okay, that makes sense. The red slider is dismantling units. You get a slight refund from that, but that's taking away from the units you already have. So I don't really see the viability in that really at all. This number down here, if we hit cancel, just so we can get back to the original, is how much your army is going to cost you, and then how much it will cost you again based off the sliders. Now, a big problem with this that I learned as a new player and was a very frustrating experience, I started the game and immediately started losing money. Well, once you look at this number right here, this is minus 2 million. We are only making 388,000. So the game starts you with an army that you actually can't manage. So the first thing you have to do is bring all these things down to essentially not quite zero, but pretty close to it. And then as you can see, we have an army that we can manage. But as we talked about, this is an over a time effect. So we hit apply here. We think we have 3 million in the bank. We don't, because this takes time to cool down to get to this number. So by the end of this, we're starting to now kind of equalize, getting close to it, that is. And now we only have $1.71 million left. So it's just a frustrating way to start the game, to immediately start losing money and not really know why. Let me as the player invest the money how I want, start these things at zero, and let me build up from there. Now, this number right here is your upkeep cost. This will go up based off the amount of troops that you have. So again, this is over time. So this number is always going to go up unless you start losing troops or dismantling troops. And this number affects your liquidity, which is again this number or this number right here. This is your population. I could not for the life of you tell you what this plus 16 means. I think that's how much you get, but again, or how much population you're getting, but again, over what time. And this is how much unit capacity you have, how much units you can draw from your population. These are all the standard fighting mechanics. That's your firepower, that's your defense, that's your piercing, and that's your speed. We knew about that from the original game, so that's not a problem. And this is how much troops you're getting over some period of time. So that's the best I can explain it to you. If somebody knows more, feel free to leave in the comments down below. But the point I'm trying to drive home is when you have a game that gives you tools that you don't understand, that you have to figure out how to use instead of how to use them best, it's a failure on the game's part. If I, as the player, have to quit this game because I don't remember what this means, and I need to go back to the tutorial, quit the game, jump into the tutorial, figure out what that means, it's a failure on the game's part. So again, an issue that could easily be solved by a hover over tooltip. Now, all of these are learning curve issues, for sure. Little gripes along the way. That is not my biggest problem with the new game. My biggest problem with the new game is the pacing of the game. Okay, so this is a game I played on stream. As we know, this is a battle sim where you conquer countries to get to 100% progress to win the game. You can win by economic means, but it's a very passive way to play. I don't know anybody who actually plays like that. So in this game, I was playing as France. You can see right now I have 32% of the world. Fantastic. However, this is the year 2182. There was a lot of sitting around and doing nothing in this game. And let me explain to you why that was. The first issue that kept popping up is the AI's alliances would go crazy. So for instance, Indonesia is sitting here. Anyone above 75 is an ally. So we have to scroll all the way down to 40th place. They are friends with 40 people. There was a lot of people like this. This was not a one-off where there would just be Ukraine sitting with no troops, but a million allies that you just couldn't attack because you can't afford to buy them all off. Because the game puts the alliance cost based on your economy, which we're going to talk about why that's a problem here in a second. But it slows down the game. So there's a lot of time where we're sitting around and doing nothing, absolutely nothing. Now, you may be thinking, you as the player, oh, I could do that. But again, harping back to this, the price is based off of what your economy is and their defensive power. And it's saying, hey, you're making 32 million. Surely you can afford an alliance of 163. However, it's not taking into account that I'm spending that money on troop maintenance and building more troops. And that's not a choice that you can afford to not do because you have to keep pace with big boys like China, who've got 53 million, or United States, who has 34 million, which is a lot in this game, where I'm sitting over here with 31 million. I couldn't possibly get an alliance with any of these people to save my exchange rate. Now, the other big issue with this game is this new thing called international standing. International standing also makes you be selective on who you can get an alliance with because you have the expectation of defending that ally. Even if it's a big country like China coming down, let's say Mozambique was still in the game. If I got an alliance with Mozambique and then China invaded Mozambique, I would be expected to defend Mozambique against China, despite me not having a military strong enough to withstand them because we're allied. And if I don't, I lose international standing. And why international standing is important is because the lower it gets, you start to lose other alliances. So we don't have any allies in this game because our international standing is so low. So Italy's not our ally, Spain's not our ally, Germany wasn't our ally. Now, that was not caused by me not defending an ally. But the second thing that international standing does, which is just mind-boggling that it'd be this way, is it goes down if you invade another country, even if it's a country that nobody likes. So, in this game, we invaded Russia with the United Kingdom. We're like, yeah, 1-2 punch him. Let's get him. Because we invaded Russia, we lost all of our alliances in the EU, basically kicked out of the EU. Our exchange rate dropped to 40%. So basically, our money wasn't worth anything. And at the end of invading Russia, despite us getting population and land and economic zones, we ended up making less money than before we had invaded. So the incentive to invade is very much non-existent. You are de-incentivized from invading, which just seems like a backward path for this game, right? Now, the next big issue with the pacing of this game is the investment of invading a country is much higher and a little bit more confusing. What I mean by that is the introduction of Reservist. Reservist is a new unit you can invest in that will go up over time. So you may be looking at a country like the United States. We have about 31 million. So we could potentially save up and invade the United States, right? No, wrong. Despite them saying they have 34 million, they have more than that. And it's in this little hidden icon over here. You have to click on the country and then this icon to see how many reservists they have. They have 7.96 reservists. So they have 39 million firepower on top of their troops, which is another 34 million. And that is on top of the militia, which are not accounted in this equation at all. I actually got stack wiped invading Algeria as France because I didn't understand the reservist mechanic, and that's not really explained anywhere. Now, outside of the fact of it being a little bit confusing, reservists make the strong even stronger. And the big problem in this game was the United States. They were very passive in this game because they knew they had a lot of reservists. They invaded Venezuela, Mauritania, the Republic of Congo, and then a little bit of Iran and Iraq. So very passive game from the United States. However, they are at 98%. They won this game by sitting back and doing nothing and having their economic growth be at 3.94%. So me as the player, the responsibility falls on me to fight the United States to bring them down from that mark because the rest of the AI didn't care. And keep in mind, the United States was doing this while having 0 allies. They should not have the exchange rate to keep up that kind of growth and be this passive in the game. So I could suicide my entire troops into the United States and then hope an AI goes into it, but I have no real viable option of taking them down, which is again why I was saying I had to try and keep pace with the United States so I could hopefully get a moment of weakness, but it just never came. So, kind of wrapping up my thoughts here, I can take change, I can take new mechanics, I can learn new things, but ultimately you have to ask and answer this one question: does it make the game more fun? And for me and a lot of the community, the answer is a resounding no. The game's update seems to have lost the spirit of what made it fun to begin with, the simplicity of it. And it's introduced this level of complexity that doesn't feel like it belongs in this game. It feels like it should be a whole different game altogether, which is fine. I mean, the ideas can work, but not really in this game. That's kind of my feelings. If you agree or disagree, let me know in the comments down below. If you have points that you feel like I got wrong, feel free to let me know. I'll be very humble to your feedback. But ultimately, I feel like I'm channeling the anger of a lot of the community, which is why I've been passionate in a lot of the segments here. So if you do like the video, if you do agree with what I'm saying, make sure to leave a like, leave a comment, and hopefully if this gets enough attention, the developer will see it and maybe make some of the changes to the game to bring it back to the state of what we all loved and enjoyed. But for now, thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.